Well, hey, everybody. I'm so excited to introduce you to my warrior friend, Tasha. Tasha, welcome to BecomingMe.TV.
Thank you so much. Such an honor.
It's so good to have you here. And many of you may have remembered we shared Janae's becoming story not too long ago. And this is Janae's sister, which is
Yay.
so cool. I love it how stories just intersect like that.
Yes.
But to kick it off today, like Tasha, why don't you just share who is Tasha?
Sure. So I am a woman of faith. And I like to say that my story is a story of becoming and overcoming. I am a wife. My husband and I just celebrated 20 years this year. I have one daughter, so I'm a mom as well. She's in seventh grade. I am a connector. I absolutely love helping other women, and that spills over from my own story. And I just am a believer that it's possible for people to live in their God-given purpose.
That is so good. I love how you introduced yourself too.
Yes,
And I can't wait to dive into your story, like that
thank you.
becoming aspect of what you just mentioned. So let's just dive in. I mean,
Sure.
what's your story? How have you become who you are today?
Sure. So I always like to say my mess became my message. And I basically was on a journey where I am an entrepreneur. I've been a full time entrepreneur for 16 years. But there was a time where I hit a wall where I had a crisis of faith. I'd like to say it was an identity crisis. I was at a place where my past caught up to where I was. I felt like a fraud in what I was doing. During that time, my husband and I were experiencing some marital problems, financial problems, and I just was in a place where I was like, God, where are you? It was so crazy because I was a leader in the church, still am. But at the time, I was praying for everybody else, but then I would go home and cry myself to sleep at night and say, God, did you forget about me? And that was so real and so raw during that time for me. I ended up reaching out for help. I had my inner circle of friends, and during the time, everybody was like, the ones that knew, they were like, girl, just pray about it. It's going to be okay. But what they didn't know is that I literally was hanging on by a thread. They didn't know the depth of my pain. They didn't know the depth of how I felt disappointed in life. And I feel like God Himself sent me an angel in the form of a life coach slash counselor. This was a Christian woman who literally, I signed up for her program. It was a 6-month program. She literally held a mirror up to me and introduced me to me because I didn't know who Tasha really was outside of the roles, outside of my past mistakes, outside of the hurt and pain that I was feeling. So the first question that she asked me was, Tasha, how are you in God? And I was so honest with her. I said, I'm not talking to Him. And it was then that she just challenged me to start journaling and start getting honest. And what happened in that process was I did start connecting back to God. I did start talking back to Him. And I realized in that time period that God never left me. God never abandoned me. He was always here for me. I just took my focus off of Him and I couldn't see because I was so distracted by life itself. And from that, I literally went on a healing journey, emotionally, spiritually, even physically, because I even had a time where I had to have a biopsy because there was a cancer scare, which came back benign. But when all that's coming at you, you don't, you can't see straight or think straight. So from the journaling, from talking to her, from talking to God again, I literally started walking out of that pain, out of that place into a place of hope and healing. So much so to where one day I literally was at home in the mirror looking at myself and I said, Tasha, don't limit me, because I realized for the first time that I'm the only one who could limit me. But I also heard God saying, Tasha, don't limit me. And from there was a book that was birthed because I was telling my truth. I was living my truth. And the truth was I was healed. I was whole. I was everything that God destined and desired me to be, even if it was in seed form. And I started telling my testimony. And what happened was other women, when I started sharing, started saying, Tasha, that's me. I'm hurting. I'm wearing a mask. And I realized then that I had a platform, that the more that I spoke my truth and shared my testimony, the more that it helped other women wake up to who they were and to locate themselves and start to understand their purpose. And so that was the beginning of a journey for me, which became an assignment.
That's incredible. And I love how at the very beginning of your story you shared that your mess became your message. And
Yeah.
it's true for all of us, but we
Yeah.
have to, like you did, look ourselves in the mirror and choose to say, hey, don't limit you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we just stay in the mess and it doesn't
Right.
become the message.
Right.
Ah,
Right.
hey, if you were
Yeah.
sitting across from another woman and you're just having coffee with her, encouraging her, what would you say?
I would tell the women, I would ask her a question first. And the question would be basic: how are you doing? Like, outside of the roles, outside of what people see on the surface, like, how are you really doing? And I would encourage her to build a support team, to build a support system, because like my pastor always says, somebody needs to know the real you at all times. That it is not about the scars, the past. It's not about what we think people need to see or know. It literally is about, who are you? How are you? And are you living the life? Do you know your purpose? I think that's what I'm trying to say is, do you know your purpose? And I would have an in-depth conversation and I would see her.
That's good. I love it. Thank you so much. I mean, for sharing your story and then just those questions that we all can walk away from answering for
Mhm.
ourselves. Um,
Yeah.
so for those of you who are watching, I want you to pretend right now you're having coffee with Tasha and just ask those questions and wrestle through them. How are you, and who are the people around you who know the real you
Yeah.
at all times? So thank you
Yeah.
so much. You inspire me. You're awesome.
Oh, thank you.